that's a big story. So I grew up in Perth, mainly urban, moved up to the city, and then moved out to the country sort of mid to late teens. But I never really had any exposure to farming or any kind of permaculture stuff. There was one instance where grandparents took us out to a farm where my uncle was working at the time. That was kind of my first exposure to farming, and I remember even back then saying that I wanted to be a farmer, just from that one instance, and the family sort of said, no, you don't want to be a farmer. So I sort of left that. My focus was much towards business, specifically property, and that was my first job when I left high school, working in property. And then for years I just tried to start a business where the aim was to make lots of money. After trying this for so long, I just reached the point where I thought that maybe this wasn't actually what I wanted. And I simplified and cut it right down, and there was a lot of influences at the time that kind of made me sit back and reassess. And that's what led to a desire to minimize my need for money, for starters, which led to me wanting to grow my own food, and which led to me eventually finding permaculture. I didn't want to have to work. I didn't want to have to go to work for money in something that I didn't like doing. So I thought if I could just grow my own food, then that's essentially meeting that need. And then I could, work as little as I needed. I wanted my time back. Yeah, I mean, you have to go to work every day. That's your time that you're giving to something that you may not necessarily enjoy doing. And the only thing you're really getting back is money. It's like you're substituting all your time just for money, just so that you can afford to live, which doesn't make any sense to me. So when I came across permaculture, I remember going to the library and getting out this big thick permaculture book and reading this thing in a week, cover to cover. And then I decided that I was going to quit my job, move out of the house I was in, and I went to volunteer on a farm in Cornwall, and I spent 6 months there. And that's when I sort of learned much more about farming and got really into the animal side of things. After living in Cornwall, I spent time working with horses through Portugal, and then I ended up on a large permaculture property in Romania. The owner was farming buffalo for the milk, making cheese. So it was there that I had my first real experience in growing veggies. So I took it on myself to clean it up, and I just remember reading books and books and books about growing food. And that was the place where I actually watched my first seed sprout. I sowed seeds there ready to plant out, and I remember getting up every single day and running into the greenhouse just to see if anything had sprouted yet. And that was the first bit. So I got back to Perth, and I wasn't actually planning on staying in Perth. I remember just walking through the airport and already planning my next escape. I was ready to go back to England or something, or back to Europe. I sort of came to this realization that if I wanted to make a difference somewhere, Perth would be the best place to do it, given that this is where I'm from and this is my home. And around the same time I came across the Bachelor of Sustainability at ECU, so I decided to actually start studying sustainability. I think shortly after that I decided to launch what I called the Perth Urban Farming Project. The whole idea was to find underutilized urban space where I could grow food to give away to people. I think I originally had the idea when I was in England, and it was from seeing how there was so much space that people just weren't using, and they'd have a shed that was just empty. They'd have a greenhouse it's empty or derelict or something. Someone could be using this. These are resources that we could be using for the betterment of everyone. And then I remember reading an article about a guy, I think in Melbourne, who was going around and harvesting fruit from everyone else's fruit trees. So these two ideas kind of met. It's like, oh, well, I could be using other people's land to do these things, and other people have all this space that they're not using. That's how the idea came to be. And then I started advertising for land. I got a lot of responses, and then eventually I got a call from Ross. And he replied to an ad I had on a website called Street Bank. and he invited me up to have a look. And I remember walking around, I was looking at this entire nursery and there's all this space that he said I could use, and there were so many resources that were already here that I needed, so it was just perfect. There's no sacrifice in terms of living arrangements. You know, going from the backpack, I was living in my sister's shed for a while, and then, you know, I was living in the back of a van. You know, now I'm in a caravan. You know, I feel like this is moving up in the world, incrementally. So there wasn't any great sacrifice. You know, I like the idea of not having much. You know, I think the amount of things I actually have now is the most that I've had for like 10 years. And it still all fits in a caravan. So it's not that much. When I have too much stuff, I just feel really heavy. I feel like my flexibility is gone. Yeah, I feel a lot freer. I think the first step in making any kind of change is making a decision. Deciding what's important to you and why. Making a big change isn't always easy for everyone, and you're going to reach times when it's challenging. And this is applicable to any kind of change, not just, you know, making a change towards working less or trying to grow more food or something. So you need to be pretty firm in your why. Like, why are you doing this? What's driving you? Because you're going to need to remind yourself of that all the time. If you're unable to make a massive change, just do it in small changes. Start a little veggie patch or something. Start to reduce the amount of money you're spending on food just by growing a little bit. And in doing so, you're also reducing the amount of time you actually need to work. So you can start cutting back work or find a job where it's part-time instead of full-time. And then you can spend more time in the garden, more time doing the things you love. And you're not only going to feel happier and freer, but you're going to be healthier as well. So I think my biggest piece of advice is just to do something. Making a step in the direction that you feel is important to you. You know, a day or a week, you're still going to get somewhere eventually. Ross started Red Planet Plants, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago. We focus on plants that have some sort of function. Most of our attention is going towards things like bush tucker plants. We also have other plants that we consider permaculture plants. You know, things like ice cream beans, which are nitrogen fixing, and you know, they produce those little fluffy pods that taste like vanilla ice cream. Things like carobs that you can use as a chocolate substitute. Quick growing species that you can use to shelter other species. Some are edible, some have medicinal values, others can be used in a permaculture system to filter water, rapidly produce biomass, things like bamboo, plants that add things to the soil. I think unofficially I've been called the Nursery Manager. I spend pretty much all my days here potting things up, making sure everything's doing well and is live, and by spring we should have a pretty good range that we can take out and start to promote to people. This is our shade tunnel, which we've obviously ripped the shade off over winter so all the plants can get a good amount of sun, and you can see here that we've got a lot of stock. This is my favourite place. There's thousands of young plants, mostly that we've grown from seed or from cuttings. I joined the Permaculture West Committee. Initially it was just as general member, but now I've become the secretary. It's an organisation that is, you know, related and in touch with all these other things happening. So we are in contact with community gardens. We encourage people to form local groups. Permaculture West is the Permaculture Association of WA. So we cover, you know, a massive area, obviously. Permaculture West is going to be starting to run its own PDCs and encouraging other people to start working together to provide some sort of education around Perth. Currently I'm enrolled in a Bachelor of Sustainability at Edith Cowan University, and that's with a focus on majoring in Sustainable Business Management. There was a time when I used to blame a lot of the problems we have in the world today on this idea of business, but a part of me has come to realise that one of the biggest influences for the way the world is today is in fact business. So if we could perhaps reimagine and redefine what business's role is within society, well then maybe we've tapped into a huge amount of influence. So my desire really is to try to help businesses incorporate sustainability into their operations. If they come to me and say, James, we think it's really important, we really want to do this because we feel like it's going to benefit everyone. If they come to me and say, oh, we're losing a lot of money because we're not incorporating sustainability, we need to get our profits back up, well, that's kind of the wrong motivation. But even then, that's still an opportunity to do something. I want to get to the point where we don't even need to use the word sustainability anymore. It shouldn't exist because really there should be no unsustainability. To ignore the fact that any business is completely dependent upon its customers, which exist within a much wider environment, which needs protecting, because if we lose our environment, we lose the people. If we lose the people, we lose business. So we need to somehow show that everything is connected to that environment that we're in, that we all share. Otherwise, your business is going down anyway. It's not going to exist for much longer. So the project is still about growing food to share it. This idea of who needed it kind of changed a lot. Yes, people that are homeless need food, people who perhaps are on really low incomes. But actually, you look around, there's actually a lot more people that are making a lot of money who still need good food. Eventually it turned out that everyone's actually in need of good food, and that everyone's in need of restoring some sort of connection to the earth, literally to the earth where the food comes from. Everyone needs connection.